Good morning. My name is Steve Murray. I'm director at the Alabama Department of Archives and History, and it's my pleasure to welcome you to this program commemorating a significant event in early American and Alabama history. In addition to those who will be introduced later in the program, I'd like to acknowledge several guests who are here. State officials, including State Treasurer Young Boozer, Commissioner of Agriculture and Industries Rick Pate, State Auditor Andrew Sorrell, State Superintendent Dr. Eric Mackey, State Representative Gina Ross, and Lisa Jones, the Director of the Alabama Historical Commission. Also with us are leadership in the Alabama nonprofit community, including Colonel Alan Miller, representing the American Village, the board, honorary state regents, and members of the Alabama Society, Daughters of the American Revolution, leaders and members of the Alabama Society, Sons of the American Revolution, and leaders and members of the Alabama Society, Children of the American Revolution. Also with us is former Representative Nupi Cosby, representing the Alabama Association of RC&D Councils. We welcome all of you, and especially an out-of-state guest, Mr. Julian Eicher, founder of the Lafayette Trail, who has done so much to raise public awareness and set in motion many of the commemorations that are happening around the country. Following the presentation of the colors, we'll be led in the Pledge of Allegiance by Honorary State Regent Jean Vaughn of the DAR, and in the National Anthem by Honorary State Regent Patrice Donnelly. Color Guard, please present the colors. Thank you, gentlemen. Please be seated. Here today to commemorate an official act by her predecessor 200 years ago is Governor Kay Ivey. Throughout her career in public service, Governor Ivey has been a friend to history. She is a member of the Daughters of the American Revolution and a proud daughter of Wilcox County. Later this month, she will reach a historic milestone by becoming the Alabama governor with the longest tenure of consecutive years of service in the state's history. At the conclusion of Governor Ivey's remarks, our special guest, the Marquis de Lafayette, will bring a response. Please join me in welcoming Governor Kay Ivey.
Thank you, Steve. I'd like to welcome our many guests here today, including Marquis de Lafayette, who was born all the way back in 1757. It's a pleasure to have all of you in attendance today. So good morning, everyone. 200 years ago, 25 years before this historic capital was built, there assembled on this hilltop a gathering of some 3,000 Alabamians. They came from all walks of life and hailed from all over our new state. All were exuberant to personally meet the most famous person of their day. It was the year 1825, and Alabama was still a young state, having joined the Union less than 6 years before. Our hard-won constitutional republic was also in relative infancy. However, across our young country, there was already a waning of patriotic spirit. A close presidential election the year before further divided the nation, capping an end to the national, quote, era of good feelings. With America's 50th birthday on the horizon, President James Monroe sought to reunite our new country and restore patriotism. He invited his old friend and fellow Revolutionary War comrade, the famous General Marquis de Lafayette, to visit the United States. The Marquis eagerly accepted. The triumphal return of this great hero of the American Revolution was met with universal enthusiasm and renewed patriotic fervor across our hamlet of our growing nation. Originally, General Lafayette was scheduled to make only a limited 3-month stay, but as word rapidly spread of his arrival, he was flooded with official invitations from all 24 states. His 3-month tour soon expanded to over a year. In coming to Alabama, General Lafayette passed through Georgia, the last of the 13 original colonies, into a land that was rapidly changing. At the Chattahoochee River, he was met by a robust welcoming party from the Creek Nation, through whose territory he would be escorted along the federal road for the next 2 days. General Lafayette reached Alabama on April the 2nd and lodged at Lucas Tavern on what is now the county line between Macon and Montgomery. The next day, Sunday, April 3rd, he arrived in Montgomery and was met by bugles, French horns, and a rendition of Hail to the Chief. General Lafayette's arrival in Alabama was a turning point. For Alabamians, the Marquis de Lafayette's presence placed us on the map, elevating our status as an equal among our fellow states in the process of growing a freedom-loving nation. Governor Israel Pickens, made this point clear in his welcome remarks to General Lafayette, quote, "Here you are now hailed by the same people you have just left in the original states, happy in the enjoyment of the same constitutional liberty and warmth with the same grateful veneration for the heroes who achieved it. It is likely Lafayette and his party enjoyed even more the remainder of their tour of Alabama. They traded their weary horse and buggy for the modern convenience of several steamboats fully stocked with all manner of provisions. After casting off from Montgomery, General Lafayette steamed down the Alabama River to Selma, then on to the state capital at Cahaba, down to Claiborne in Monroe County, and finally southwestward to Mobile. In each location, he was welcomed by large, jubilant crowds, eloquent speeches, and bountiful banquets. It should be mentioned that the state of Alabama spared no expense in honoring the great Frenchman along his journey. Reportedly, an amount equal to 20% of the state budget was spent to properly celebrate Lafayette's 8th-day visit. Reflecting on this great moment in our history, there is no doubt that the Marquis de Lafayette made a profound impression on our young state 200 years ago. He unified Alabamians behind their new home and our new country. His historic visit is even more significant today as we prepare to celebrate America's 250th birthday next year. At this time, I'd like to ask today's General Lafayette to come join me as I present you with his proclamation honoring your historic visit to Alabama. Thank you, General Lafayette. And like Governor Pickens 200 years ago, I say welcome to the great state of Alabama.
Votre Excellence, Monsieur le Justice, Mesdames et Messieurs les ministres, Mesdames et Messieurs les sénateurs, Mesdames et Messieurs les députés, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, I am very pleased to be in Montgomery. When I found myself on your magnificent territory within the limits of this Commonwealth, by which I have been so honorably and affectionately invited, the emotions of American and French patriotism have united in my heart, as they have mingled in the blessed union which has made Alabama a part of that Republican Confederation that has risen for the happiness of existing millions, of numberless millions yet to come, and for the example of mankind. Those feelings are still more forcibly excited at this moment when I am, in the name of the people of the state, most affectionately welcomed by their respected Chief Magistrate on this glorious spot. Here, Madame, the blood of the sons of my revolutionary contemporaries has mingled with the blood of the native sons of Alabama on so many memorable and unparalleled victories, which so splendidly terminated the war just in its principles and most gallantly supported on both elements. You are pleased, Madame, to congratulate me for my enjoyments and the wonders I have hitherto witnessed for those which still await me. Enjoyments the more delightful to an American veteran, as in these wonders we find so many irresistible arguments in favor of the principles upon which has been hoisted our standard of independence and freedom. I am particularly obliged to your friendly and liberal observation that in this state, a daily evidence is given of the fitness of an American population for a wise use of the blessings of free institutions and self-government. I beg you, and through you, Madam, I beg the people in the legislature of Alabama to accept my respectful, devoted, and affectionate acknowledgments. Since my arrival in the United States on the 15th of August of last year, I am sensibly affected by the honors conferred upon me by the American people. The kindness with which they have received my conduct has magnified my merit. I have seen here the best proofs of a great, prosperous, and happy people in the rapid advancements of the polite and useful arts and in the stability of your free institutions. I feel happy to observe such decided proofs of industry, sobriety, and prosperity. Montgomery is a happy illustration of the blessings of liberty secured to you by your excellent Constitution, and I shall always have the profoundest sense of the cordial welcome given me here, and I am sincerely delighted with the manner of my reception by every kind of person. The kind and flattering reception with which I am honored by the citizens of all the towns I have visited to this date excite the most lively feelings of gratitude in me that could not but enhance the inexpressible delight I have enjoyed at the sight of the immense and wonderful improvements so far beyond even the fondest anticipation of a warm American heart, and which in the space of 50 years have so gloriously evinced the superiority of your popular institutions and self-government over the too imperfect state of political civilization found in every part of the other hemisphere. The truly Republican form of the American institutions cannot but endear them to every citizen of the United States. Yet I shall tell you that to anyone who has had the opportunity of comparison with other countries, the blessings of these institutions appear still more conspicuous. The testimonies of kindness so flattering to me with which I have been honored by the legislative and executive branch of this Commonwealth, and those which successively have hailed my approach, could not but make me anticipate the satisfaction I find in the affectionate welcome from the people of Alabama, the citizens of this town, and in this gratifying meeting with Your Excellency. Happy I am, Madame, to witness the rapid improvements that have taken place in your young state. And although I have had, during my visit to the several parts of the Union daily occasions to repeat, I have ever enjoyed a new pleasure in repeating. And I think it can never too often be presented to domestic and foreign observation that these wonders are the result of true Republican institutions and self-government. Easy it would be for me to feel myself at home in this state, which I enter with the most grateful and patriotic sentiments. The United States are the first nation on the records of history who have founded their Constitution upon an honest investigation and clear definition of their natural and social rights. Nor can we doubt but that notwithstanding the combinations made elsewhere by despotism against the sacred rights of mankind, immense majorities in other countries will not in vain observe the happiness and prosperity of a free, virtuous, and enlightened people. The struggle for freedom by the patriotic citizens of America towards the close of the last century was successful and has proved most auspicious to human happiness. Americans are and should be uncompromisingly proud of their republic, its liberties, its growth in population, wealth, and prestige. Your faith in constitutional freedom is unbounded, and you rightfully believe that it must prevail throughout the world. I share this belief. In returning to this country after so long an absence, in receiving such proofs of gratitude and affection wherever I go, in witnessing the prosperity of this land, a prosperity you are pleased to say I have been instrumental in promoting, I feel emotions for which no language is adequate. In meeting again my former friends, in seeing the children and grandchildren of those who were my companions in the War of the Revolution, I feel a gratification which no words can express. Amid the grateful emotions which the brilliant and affectionate reception from the good people of this metropolis cannot fail to excite, I particularly wish to acknowledge the justice you have done to my feelings. Nothing can be more gratifying to me than the testimonies I receive of my living still in the hearts of the people of Alabama. I beg you, Madam, to be pleased to accept and transmit to the citizens of this state the cordial tribute of my grateful, constant, and affectionate respect. Merci.
Thank you, General. Our keynote today is by the Honorable Will Sellers, Associate Justice of the Alabama Supreme Court. Now, although Justice Sellers has a sterling reputation as an attorney and a jurist, folks who know him well will readily tell you that he's actually a historian trapped in a lawyer's body. He's a frequent contributor of historical essays to the state's media outlets. Justice Sellers thinks historically in his professional life and is a fervent believer that our body politic today is made healthier when we examine and understand our past. Please welcome Justice Sellers.
Well, Steve, thank you very much. It's a real honor to be here. Governor Ivey, great always to be in your presence. And Monsieur de Lafayette, thank you so much for being here. The wine that we served you 200 years ago must have done very, very well. So the 20% of our budget seems to have done a great job in keeping you hale and hearty. So this is really funny. So when Steve first called me and asked me if I would think about talking about Lafayette, I laughed because the one thing that Steve couldn't know is that Lafayette is very significant part of my biography, because you see, 50 years ago in the 6th grade in Ms. Baker's class, I chose Lafayette to be the revolutionary person that I would write about. Now, I'm not sure what your experience in the 6th grade was, but the 6th grade requirement was that you had to write a paper, and it had to be 5 pages, and it had to have 3 references, and one had to be a periodical. Well, I just wasn't sure that I was going to make it past the 6th grade. I thought maybe I could eke out a 3-page paper, maybe work at the E-Light washing dishes or whatever it is. But I chose Lafayette for several reasons, and it's really I'm honored to be here to tell you that and weave that into some remarks. The first reason I chose Lafayette is I was very interested in World War I aviation. And it was interesting to me to find that when some of the American troops landed in France, what do they say in 1917? Lafayette, we are here. And that's always been an amazing story to me, because I didn't know when I was 12-year-old who Lafayette was, why people in 1917 that are American teenagers in a way, young guys, reference Lafayette. The other reason I chose Lafayette is that my mother was fluent in French. And she did her absolute best to steer me away from my father's Francophobia, which was very difficult in an age of Charles de Gaulle. But Mother wanted me to focus on France when it was a reliable ally in the person of Lafayette, and so Lafayette fit the bill. My final reason for choosing Lafayette is that he was one of the few revolutionary people that actually came to Alabama. And that simply, as a 12-year-old, cemented my belief that everything that is important has a connection to Alabama. And I still believe that Alabama is the center of the universe, or why else would Lafayette come if that wasn't the case? And also 50 years ago, we were gearing up for the bicentennial of the Revolution and the Declaration, so we had to pick somebody, so I chose Lafayette. So Steve had no idea of this part of my story, and I assumed correctly that in spite of my mother's pride, that paper from the 6th grade is not in the state archives. I know that is probably a shock to everybody, but it's not, regrettably so. But my research, if you can call it that, has had an impact on my life and really contributed to my love of history. And while I don't have any specific recollections of my paper, there are 2 things that stand out, kind of random. The first thing is that I came to appreciate that Marquis was not short for Mark. that actually Lafayette had several names, and it was Marie Joseph, Paul, Yves, Roque, Gilbert, de Montier, de Lafayette, which was kind of interesting for a 12-year-old kid to have somebody with this long name, so I understood that Lafayette was a title, so that was a very helpful thing for me. But the second thing is, there was a monument in Montgomery. It was in front of where the Civic Center used to be and now where the Renaissance was, and there was a monument, Lafayette's visit there, and my father had an instant camera, and he let me take a picture of this as a 12-year-old. It had a lot of things you had to do. That it was a land camera, and you took the picture and waited, and there was the thing of the monument, and I was allowed to include that in my paper. Now, I'm not sure exactly what the content of my paper might have said, but I got to assume it probably went something like this. Lafayette was born into a noble family. He married when he was 17. He came to America to fight at age 19. George Washington befriended him. He was wounded at the Battle of Brandywine Creek. He returned to France to convince the king to aid the Americans, and he came to Alabama in 1825. I have to assume that I probably turned this into 5 pages. Thankfully, I think they were single-spaced, or double-spaced, excuse me. And I have no idea of what my grade was, but I think that I passed the 6th grade. If not, I hope the statute of limitations has run and nobody's going to investigate that. So thank you for indulging me for a little detour of my connection with Lafayette. I would hope, though, in the last 50 years, I have matured a bit more, and my wife is here to make sure of this maturity, and she'll report to my children how well I'm doing on this maturity thing, that I have a better appreciation for Lafayette and understand why it is 200 years since he came here, we still celebrate him and we talk about his final tour. I mentioned earlier my recollection from Lafayette about the World War I fighters. And you think about that in 1917, 90 years after he comes to Alabama, young Americans are remembering Lafayette. They're talking about him. They're here. They're repaying a debt. They feel an obligation to fight for France. And you have to think, why? It's it's unusual when you think about it. And if you think about where we are now, it's hard to think of any one person that would maybe animate Americans or anybody to go, and they would think they had a debt to repay. So that really set something in my mind. But I was intrigued by Lafayette on this surface level, and I've come to understand a lot more than just the generalities that I cited. And I see the Lafayette, his persons, in different terms. And as the title of my talk indicates, I think he's as relevant today as ever. Lafayette came to America steeped in the intellectual machinations of the philosophes of France. He came of age when various principles of first government, nature of man, liberating freedom were all the rage. He saw the American Revolution as the manifestation of all that he'd read about, a revolt against tyranny, a fight for independence, the creation of a representative republic based upon fundamental tenets, freedom and democracy. This idea of the American Revolution inspired him to participate, much like revolutionary movements have done through the ages for youngsters. But at age 19, he came to fight. But he quickly realized in this fight that this war was not an intellectual exercise with armchair generals moving soldiers around on a chessboard. His experience showed him the realities of war and the practical side of fighting a well-trained standing army and what it took to survive. Quite critically, I think his relationship with George Washington probably impacted him as much as anything. Unlike the academics in France who pontificated about any number of theories, Washington was a practical man. He was learned and he was wise, but he was no detached philosopher. He was a soldier and a farmer, and by nature had to be practical, for he had battles to win and crops to harvest. This was a different side of a revolution that Lafayette had not seen. And what he found in Washington was a kindness and warmth he had never had, as his own father died when Lafayette was a toddler. Lafayette was inspired by the generous nature of George Washington and his dogged determination, not to win the war to create some kind of utopia, but to secure independence from a mother country that had become estranged and forgotten that the colonists had God-given rights. Washington taught by example and showed Lafayette that the revolution he was witnessing in and participating in was not an attempt to jettison tradition, but was a war to throw off the yoke of tyranny and restore a system of representative government that the colonists were used to. And you would have to realize that Virginia's House of Burgesses started in 1619. So 150 years we've had all this independence going on, and that's what Washington sought to preserve. Lafayette became a celebrity as his exploits were reported not only in the colonies, but in Great Britain and on the European mainland. The ideas of revolution were applauded by the literati of the age, who came to idealize America's war as a template for the rest of the world. They heaped praise on Lafayette and his bravery in battle. It was not lost on the wider public that Lafayette had volunteered, but unlike other idealists that came to fight, he paid his own way. In other words, he had skin in the game. And when he was wounded, this added to his story and romanticized his personal contribution, because bleeding and dying for a cause made the adventure seem more noble. That Lafayette didn't die of his wounds further enhanced his reputation, as if he had been spared and chosen to work for the causes of liberty worldwide. When he left America, he was a real hero, and when he landed in France, his reputation soared. But when Lafayette returned to France, his philosophical underpinnings for revolution had changed from the theoretical to the practical. Washington had shown him that revolution wasn't a revolt centered in ideas about the right size and form of government, but was a practical response of a free people who merely wanted to live in peace and conduct their affairs without an overbearing monarchy limiting their pursuit of happiness. Lafayette left America at the high mark of victory and left intact a wonderful reputation and powerful memories with the revolutionary generation who would now lead the country. But as France devolved into revolution, Lafayette tried to provide leadership to steer the French experience closer to America's. But without the underpinnings that had sustained American independence, France's revolution sadly became a reign of terror. The once admired and respected Lafayette was now out of favor. His wife was in prison, and but for the intervention of James Monroe, and his wife might have met the same fate as Marie Antoinette. For his part, Lafayette escaped, but he escaped to Austria, who was at war with France, and he was imprisoned for 5 years. So he went from hero to zero in only a matter of years. Lafayette had experienced the highs of the successful American Revolution and the lows of the anarchy of the French Revolution. He would sideline himself from politics only to get sucked in as France went through various phases in trying to establish their national identity again. But by 1823, he had lost his seat in France's Chamber of Deputies. He was despised by the king and lamented what seemed like a lost cause of bringing France a constitutional monarchy. Completely out of sorts and isolated, he wrote to his friend, President James Monroe, and lamented that he hadn't been to America in quite some time, and suggested maybe returning to America would be good for his spirits. Well, James Monroe, as the governor alluded to, absolutely jumped on this idea and invited Lafayette to return to America. Monroe viewed the return of Lafayette as a much-needed morale boost to the sectionalism that was dividing America. Monroe believed that having Lafayette return would remind everybody of the reasons for the founding, how and why the revolution succeeded, and that Lafayette would restore a sense of patriotism and unity when division and discord were on the horizon. Like France, America was in many ways at a crossroads. The country had grown and prospered, but in its abundance, the country seemed to lose a sense of itself. The world had changed since the nation's birth. Following America's example, other colonists in South America had revolted and proclaimed their independence as well. The old world realized that even though America was still a young country, its future might was apparent. The expansion of the country, its innovation, and its success at independence in many ways frightened Europe. The autocrats of Europe saw America as a bad example, as the revolutionary spirit was infectious, not only in America, but now in Europe as well. And to stop the spread of the revolution, especially the colonies, in Europe, the Holy Alliance got together and indicated they might have some desire to retake the colonies. And this is when James Monroe proclaimed the Monroe Doctrine. And as part of him talking about the Monroe Doctrine. When Lafayette read it, he responded and praised Monroe for doing this because it was critical to him that the revolutionary spirit continue. Well, this did not set well with the King of France, but all this related to Monroe inviting him to come to the United States. Monroe could see what was on the horizon in America. There was a bitter election that was underway. Division and strife seemed the order of the day, and it seemed like Americans had lost sight of their revolutionary foundations. And Monroe posited with some of his advisors, what better way to restore appreciation for the successful American Revolution than bringing Lafayette back for a grand tour to remind Americans of George Washington and the noble cause of the Revolution that created a framework for liberty and abundance. In many ways, Lafayette was the ideal returning hero. He had celebrity status, and people would listen to him. Perhaps more important, he had two experiences to relate. He could tell of the glories of the American Revolution and recount his part in knowledge of the leading revolutionary figures. But he could also tell of his experience in his home country that had been less successful. He was then uniquely qualified to help Americans more fully appreciate what their revolution had achieved, but also what their revolution had avoided. He could compare and contrast the results of both revolutions to show how America had prospered and grown over 50 years and how others had not. In short, Lafayette was the out-of-town consultant with no side in any controversy, no axe to grind. He could help America come to terms with its status and help Americans see the unvarnished big picture of what they had achieved and perhaps appreciate the political and social structure that the revolution had obtained. Lafayette could call citizens back to their revolutionary first principles and soothe, if not eliminate, the sectional differences that questioned the fundamentals of the founding. As the governor indicated, Lafayette's visit in Alabama was a public spectacle, but it was a public spectacle everywhere. And I would remind you, he did this from July 1824 to September of 1825. You truly can't compare any celebration. Perhaps, Governor, if Auburn wins on Monday, Toomer's Corner may be significant and something to compare, but you'd have to think that happened, a Toomer's Corner happened everywhere he went. It's remarkable. When he came to America, his visit was widely covered in the newspapers. And in reporting the extravagance, it seemed that one extravagance built on another. So everywhere he went, they had to outdo. So it really became a most amazing place. He spent 9 days in Alabama. And as much as the celebrations did create a distraction from contemporary politics, Lafayette was not able to provide the critical patriotic pivot to create a unified feeling of revolutionary days. But even so, his visit mattered, and it still matters today, because in celebrating him 200 years ago, we are transported back to an age, and we are forced to consider the ideas that undergirded the revolution and the events of the revolution itself. Lafayette's memory forces us to consider the character and person of George Washington. We come face to face with the reality that the success of the revolution was never a foregone conclusion, but required sacrifice, suffering, and deprivations. Lafayette matters today because in considering the wild, enthusiastic crowds, we know there was something unique in his person that attracted people to see him. In Lafayette, we see a war hero who fought in 2 revolutions, one successful and the other less so. Lafayette causes us to ask, why did the revolution in America succeed and the French Revolution deteriorate into chaos? He was an eyewitness and an active participant in both. He knew the key players, Washington and Robespierre, personally. He saw the words of revolution and the zeal of patriots turn to a noble cause in America and in France manipulated to create a reign of terror. Lafayette causes us to square 2 competing claims of human nature and government, because in his person and experience, he saw what actually worked and achieved prosperity. He was a testament to the civility and practicality of George Washington and was a reminder to everyone that greatness and power are sometimes expressed in restraint and resignation. In celebrating Lafayette, we are celebrating that exuberant spirit of youth that compelled a teenage nobleman to come to America and fight for an ideal. We see Lafayette's enthusiasm tempered by war and the practical realities of fighting. We learn from Lafayette that reason and philosophy work well in a vacuum, but fail miserably when confronted by human nature. By commemorating Lafayette, we come to terms with our history. We see our state and nation in context and realize the genius of our founders, their sacrifice, and the constitutional legacy that gives us a freedom and a liberty that is the envy of the world. My journey with Lafayette began 50 years ago with the simple recital of facts of his story and a curiosity of a celebrity's visit to Alabama. But now I see, and I hope you will too, that the person of Lafayette and even his myth calls us to consider the foundations of our country and why we have succeeded as a nation and why others have failed. Lafayette's visit asks us to explore the roots of American order to better understand the experiment that continues to be the United States. So I hope 200 years, we can now enthusiastically say, Lafayette, we're still here. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Justice Sellers. That was extraordinary. We'll take the sixth grade paper at the State Archives, but we must have the 2025 paper. No commemoration of Lafayette's visit is complete without the presence and leadership of the heritage organizations who have worked for more than 135 years to keep the memory of the founders alive. With us today are the board, honorary state regents, and members of the Alabama Society of the Daughters of the American Revolution, led by State Regent Malinda Williams. After Ms. Williams brings remarks, we will move directly to the presentation of wreaths, starting with Ms. Williams and then Mr. Benny Hanna, who is the president of the Alabama Society of the Sons of the American Revolution, and Ms. Carolyn Pennington, first vice president of the Alabama Society Children of the American Revolution. Please welcome Ms. Williams.
Thank you. Good morning. As the State Regent of Alabama, I bring you greetings on behalf of the over 4,000 Alabama daughters and 66 chapters across this great state. It is a profound honor to stand before you in our state's capital, where history truly echoes through the walls, reminding us of the sacrifices made to secure the freedoms we cherish. As we approach the 250th anniversary of our nation's birth, we gather not only to reflect on the legacy of the American Revolution, but to also celebrate the enduring spirit of patriotism that binds us together as Americans. The American Revolution was more than just a fight for independence. It was a foundation of a nation built on principles of liberty, democracy, and self-determination. In honoring this legacy, we must recognize one of the Revolution's greatest heroes, Marquis de Lafayette. More than just a French ally, Lafayette was a true champion of liberty, a brother to the American cause, and a symbol of enduring friendship between nations that helped secure our independence. His unwavering dedication and courage on the battlefield, along with his deep belief in freedom, helped shape the foundation of our country. When Lafayette embarked on his farewell tour of America in 1824, he was welcomed as a living embodiment of the American Revolution's legacy. His visit to Alabama in 1825 was a moment of great historic significance. Even though our state was still very young, Alabamians embraced him with gratitude and admiration, recognizing his invaluable role to securing the freedoms that we now enjoy. His journey through Alabama serves as a lasting reminder that the spirit of the Revolution was not just a part of our history, but it is a part of who we are. And standing on the threshold of our nation's 250th anniversary, we honor those who came before us by renewing our commitment to preserving their stories and continuing their work. As daughters of the American Revolution, we are delighted to offer a very unique opportunity to participate in this commemoration in a meaningful and lasting way. Together, let us ensure that the legacy that our ancestors is not only remembered, but celebrated and passed on for generations to come. Thank you. So on behalf of the Alabama Society Daughters of the American Revolution, I do present this wreath to honor the 200th anniversary of General Lafayette's farewell tour. May we always remain steadfast in our mission to celebrate, educate, and preserve this great nation's rich history. Thank you.
On behalf, get over by the microphone so you can hear me. On behalf of the 1,100 members of the Alabama Society Sons of the American Revolution and our 13 chapters scattered throughout the state of Alabama, we bring you greetings, and especially to our special guest today. Thank you, Governor, for being here. Thank you, Justice. Thank you, Lafayette. But 2 centuries ago, Lafayette, a noble hero of freedom and steadfast ally of the young nation, graced this very land with his presence. His visit stands as a monumental chapter in our shared history, a testament to the enduring friendship between the United States and France, and a reminder of the values of liberty and democracy that binds us together. Thank you.
It is noteworthy that the American Revolution General Lafayette would have been young enough to be a member of our organization. His service to this great country should be remembered by all generations. This wreath is dedicated on behalf of the Alabama Society of Children of the American Revolution.
Thank you all very much. Rounding out today's program is Colonel Alan Miller, Executive Director of the American Village in Montevallo. Colonel Miller and his wonderful team are shepherding our state's efforts toward commemorating the nation's 250th anniversary, and he's here to help us build a bridge between commemorating General Lafayette and remembering the birth of our nation. Colonel Miller.
Well, good morning. First, I'd like to extend my heartfelt thanks to Governor Ivey, the members of the Alabama Legislature, Director Steve Murray of the Alabama Department of Archives and History, and the American Friends of Lafayette, and everyone who's worked so hard to make this event a reality. It truly is an honor for me to have the opportunity to speak today. I stand before you today in place of Senator Arthur Orr. Of course, anybody who's spent any time at all with Senator Orr knows that he loves history, he loves this state, and he loves his nation. And there's no question that he would be here today if his legislative duties didn't call him elsewhere. I'm privileged to share in this celebration of the 200th anniversary of General Lafayette's return to Alabama, a moment in history that reminds us of the enduring friendship between our nation and the great champion of liberty, Marquis de Lafayette. As CEO of American Village, I have the distinct honor of leading an institution dedicated to preserving and celebrating our country's founding ideals. Governor Ivey has designated American Village as the celebration capital for Alabama's commemoration of America's 250th birthday. And today's gathering serves as an important reminder that this momentous occasion is just around the corner. And the truth is, we won't just be celebrating in 2026, we'll be celebrating all year long, beginning in just a couple of weeks with an event called Two Lights for Tomorrow, where we'll ask everyone to reflect and remember Paul Revere's ride. But really it's an opportunity for everyone to pause and look back to our founding principles. It will be signified by shining two lights through your window, either at home. We're asking government offices, businesses to participate, and we expect for that to be a special, unifying event. The next day, on the campus at American Village, there will be a reenactment of the Battle of Concord as we pause to remember the first time in our history that Americans stood shoulder to shoulder in defense of freedom. And there will also be a special opportunity for us to celebrate the men and women of Alabama's National Guard, and we hope to see many of you there. But today, as we reflect on Lafayette's journey back to these shores, we recognize that he was not just a hero of the American Revolution. He was a living testament to the principles set forth in the summer of 1776, the principles that define us, inspire us, and demand our attention today. We are born free and also equal. This simple but profound truth calls on us to value and respect not only our own liberty, but also that of our fellow citizens. It's a call to unity, mutual respect, and an ever-renewing commitment to the pursuit of a more perfect union. Lafayette understood this. He dedicated his life to the cause of liberty, not just for one people, but for all mankind. And today, we remember his return to Alabama as more than just a historical footnote, but a moment to pause and reflect on the foundations of our nation and the principles of freedom, equality, and the inalienable rights of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. May we use this occasion to rededicate ourselves to these founding principles, to not only preserve them for ourselves, but to uphold them for one another. And may we ever strive towards their perfection. As we celebrate today, let us also look forward with excitement, hope, and a renewed sense of purpose. May we, like Lafayette, continue to be a beacon of liberty and a light for all who yearn to breathe free. Thank you, and may God bless Alabama and the United States of America.
Thank you. We look forward to seeing many of you at future events as we transition to the commemoration of the 250th. A few announcements. There are several other events remaining this week as we celebrate General Lafayette's presence. This evening at the State Archives, you're all attended to join us for a 5 p.m. reception and then a 6 p.m. program, fantastic panel discussion, exploring some of these issues a little deeper with a terrific panel of speakers. Please join us just across the street at 5 o'clock this afternoon, or then at 6 p.m. for the program. At Old Cahaba on Saturday, the state's capital in 1825, the Alabama Historical Commission and the Cahaba Foundation will welcome all of us to a fantastic celebration. They're reenacting some events that took place in 1825. I'm especially looking forward to the wild game dinner, which is how they feted the general in 1825. So be there with us at Cahaba at 10 to 2. Is that correct, on Saturday? Then on Sunday in Purdue Hill, one of the general's other stops was at Claiborne. The Masonic Lodge at Claiborne is still extant and has since been relocated to Purdue Hill, where the Claiborne Purdue Hill Foundation will host the public on Sunday. Then there are more events in Mobile on Monday and Tuesday. You can find more information about all of these at the table out in the lobby when you leave today. I want to thank the Alabama Association of RC&D Councils, the Alabama Bicentennial Commission Foundation, and the Alabama Humanities Alliance for financial support making today's events possible. After the color guard retires the colors, please return to your seats for a few minutes so we can coordinate a few photographs here at the front of the room with Governor Ivey and Lafayette before we adjourn. And then once we're done, the Daughters of the American Revolution will lead us in a procession to the south lawn of the Capitol. 100 years ago, the DAR installed a monument to what was then the centennial anniversary of Lafayette's visit. If you'd like to join that after we adjourn, we're going to meet down in the first floor lobby of the Capitol, and then once we're all aligned there, we'll head outside to go visit the memorial. Now I'm going to ask you to please rise. Color guard, please retire the colors.
Guard, halt! Right face. Colors reverse.
As we gather around this beautiful monument, it helps remind us of our important work and how it will affect this great nation. We are the ones that are keeping our stories and memories of the Revolutionary War patriots alive. Our state chaplain, Rebecca Riddick, will now open us in prayer. Mrs. Riddick.
Arms.
Please join with me in prayer. Our Heavenly Father, with hearts filled with love and gratitude, we ask your presence with us as we gather on this 100th anniversary of the historic marker placed in honor of General Lafayette, an American Revolutionary War patriot. The unequaled liberties enjoyed in America today are the legacy of brave, strong patriots like General Washington and General Lafayette. Their deep faith and belief in your guidance, together with the hope of living in freedom, fortified them throughout the War of Independence. We give you thanks for your many blessings and ask that your Holy Spirit be with us always. May we always remember those who fought for the freedom of the United States of America. Amen.
Thank you, Ms. Riddick. We will now have some remarks by Amanda Gunn, Chapter Regent of the Francis Marion Chapter here in Montgomery. Mrs. Gunn.
Today we remember and honor the life of Revolutionary War patriot General Marquis de Lafayette, whose valiant service to country and heroic sacrifices aided and advanced the cause of independence. Let us recognize the fidelity and integrity. We must guard always the heritage bequeathed by those who had everything to lose. We express our gratitude to the members of the Francis Marion Chapter who placed this monument and historic plaque 100 years ago today, April 3rd, 1925.
Thank you, Ms. Gunn. Our State First Vice Regent Janet Deaton will now lead us in the presentation of wreaths. Mrs. Deaton.
The presentation of the wreath of the Alabama Society Daughters of the American Revolution by Malinda Williams, State Regent. The presentation of the wreath of the Alabama Society Sons of the American Revolution by Benny Hanna, State President.
Arts.
The presentation of the wreath of the Alabama Society Children of the American Revolution by Caroline Pennington, First Vice President. Thank you all for your meaningful presentations.
I would like to thank the Alabama Society Sons of the American Revolution Color Guard, led by Commander Joe Barker, for their service to our society and participation in today's ceremony. Nothing is really ended until it is forgotten. Whether it is kept in memory, it still endures. Therefore, we, the members of the Alabama Society Daughters of the American Revolution, commit ourselves to remembering and cherishing the sacrifices of this site. May it keep alive an appreciation for our beloved heritage. I would like to now ask our state chaplain, Rebecca Riddick, to give our benediction. Mrs. Riddick.
Please lift your heads for today's benediction. May the blessing of God rest upon this place and abide here forever. May we go forth with praise for our American heritage and ask God's sovereign blessing upon our nation now and forevermore. Amen.
Thank you. We would like to get some photographs, so if people will make their way over here, the